Well, hello there. Alrighty. For today in pressure cooking, we're going to do another type of meal. It's going to be a soup. It is called Cajun 15 bean soup. Whoops. Well, it might help if I put it on the right side. There we go. Cajun 15 bean soup. I have taken this out of the plastic bag it comes in and vacuum sealed it into this jar here. It just lasts longer than sitting in a plastic bag on the shelf. The beans don't go as stale as fast. I did change some things in the recipe on the back. The recipe calls for a fresh onion, and it calls for also a fresh garlic. And I ended up using the chopped garlic dried that I got from the store because that's all I had at the time. The juice of one lemon usually comes to about 3 to 4 tablespoons in this recipe if you don't have a lemon, by the way. I just went ahead and measured it out. Also, I used andouille sausage. So, I also cooked mine fully before canning. Pressure canning can make the beans a bit soggy, but considering I just have a bunch of people in this household who like them that way. Each his own. So, without any further ado, let's get into making soup. Are you ready? Let's get to it. I cleaned, rinsed, and soaked the beans overnight, and now I'm in the process of rinsing them off again, looking through them, picking out anything discolored or skins that came off, and then putting them into the pot to cook. Add 8 cups of water. Now I'm preparing my meat for the soup, and it's going to be andouille. I'm cutting them in quarters so that the meat will get evenly distributed in the bowls. I've used Richard's andouille sausage. If you're from up north, it's spelled Richards, but we pronounce that Richard. It's a last name, not a first. Nice French name there. I'm not worrying about browning this because it's going to get cooked with the beans and in the pressure cooker. I was out of onions, so I'm adding dried onion flakes. It's a 4-to-1 mix. The same with garlic, 4-to-1. I did put a little bit more garlic than 4-to-1 though. Alright, let that simmer for an hour and 30 minutes, stirring occasionally. While that's simmering, I am going to prepare my water canner to sterilize my jars. A lot of people have talked to me about, well, I can't lift up the water canner full of water, it's just too heavy. Guess what? This is what I do. I got a little ice holder from one of the dollar stores, and I use that to fill up my water canner. Checking and stirring the pot. As you can see there, it's simmering really, really well. I'm debating about turning down the heat a little bit. What I'm trying to do is time the simmering and cooking of the bean soup with sterilizing the jars. Hot soup, hot jars. Cold soup, cold jars. Hot soup, hot jars. Very important. You do not want your jars to shatter because that makes one heck of a mess. Alright, I'm putting one jar in to see how deep it is. I can tell right off the bat it's not deep enough. I'm using pint-sized jars. So I'm adding more water. And then I'm going to put in some more jars and arrange them. The main thing is to make sure you have at least 1/4 inch of water below your jar rack. Hence, that's why you see that black silicone rack under it because the rack itself sat on the bottom of the pan. And that's a good way to get the bottom of your jars busted. You don't want it heating up so unevenly like that. You need some kind of buffer between the bottom and the jars. Here I am arranging the jars so they're not touching the sides, nor are they touching each other. Checking on my pot again. Yes, it needs another stir. Looking good. Alrighty, I'm thinking I will turn the heat down just a tad because it's just about coming to boiling, so I'm just going to adjust it a little. Now what I'm doing is I know where 1 inch is on my finger, and I'm making sure the jars are in there at least 1 inch. At this point it had turned out to be 1.5 inches, which was fine. Now I'm going to bring it up to a full boil, set my timer for 10 minutes. I'm going to take my lids and I am going to put them on the back stove burner. I'll get that out of the way. And I am going to get those not up to a boiling because I don't want to damage the wax rings. But I am going to get them up to a pretty good size simmer so that when I pull it off the heat, they're going to be fairly sterilized and the wax will be softened enough to help with the seal. Oh yes, and when you're doing jars, you need to add vinegar. 2 tablespoons of vinegar in your water canner, or if you're pressure cooking, in your pressure canner. Okay, maybe a little more than 2 tablespoons, but it happens. This prevents buildup of any hard minerals in your water. It would make your glasses look cloudy with that buildup. Now I'm adding a can of Rotel because I want these a little spicier. I'm putting in lemon juice because I'm also going to be putting in tomato paste, and I don't want it to brown when I'm canning. That's what the lemon juice prevents. Also, here's another cool tip for you. This is to prove it's not Cajun. Cajun food does not have tomatoes. Traditionally, Cajun foods were considered the country foods. They didn't have things like tomatoes. Creole foods had tomatoes. 15 bean soup is neither Creole nor Cajun. And actually, this company is in Indiana. I guess they just wanted something fancy on the bag with the name of their soup. But it's not Creole, it's not Cajun. But I'm going to spice that sucker up. Alrighty, so Tony's is to taste. Mix that up a little bit. And I'll be able to tell if it's where I need it to be from the smell. I know when it's spicy enough, you can smell it. Even with a human nose. I'm stirring it up, trying to get that tomato paste to break up some. I don't need to add water. There's plenty of it in there. Yeah, I needed a little more. So we mix it up a bit. Then I'm going to put the lid back on and let it simmer until I've reached the 1:30 mark. You want your jars to be done before your food, because the jars you can just turn the heat down on some where it's not a rolling boil and boiling all your water out. But to do that to food, you risk burning it. The seasoning packet that came with this was ham flavored. And actually it wasn't half bad. It was pretty good. It was a nice offset to the andouille. They blended real well. So, finish that up. And now it's time. I'm going to take my jars out first. And we're going to put the jars onto a towel. We don't want to put hot jars on a cold countertop. You could very easily break the bottoms of them, or they could crack all the way up. I'm getting my lids. You can see a couple little bubbles still surfacing there. But surprisingly, the camera's not picking up the steam this time around. It's picking up that steam. All right, hot food, hot jars. I'm taking my little metal funnel for my jars, my mason jar funnel, and I am going to fill these up, trying to get an equal amount of food and juice, or soup, if you will, into the jars, all the jars. I'm going to do 5 jars this time around instead of 6, mainly because of the space requirement. I'm running out of spots to put jars. So, I have the jar filled. I'm looking at it to see if it's at that 1-inch mark. I measure and find out, whoops, I'm a little over. So I'll pour a little bit of it out. Measure it again. It's right there, so I am good to go. That one gets put off to the side. I'm going to go ahead and fill the other 4 jars, measuring each time to make sure I am at 1 inch. You are going to need 1-inch headspace. If you don't, it's quite possible that the food in the jars will boil over, escape through the rings, and they won't seal because of that. Here comes the last jar. I'm a fast worker, aren't I? Alrighty, jars are done. You could see some steam there. I did a little cheating with that. You see the pot down on the floor? I took the hot water using a Pyrex measuring cup and just pouring water into my pressure canner from there. The water's already hot. I don't have to worry about cross-contamination with the water because it's not touching food. It's just touching the jars. So I've got vinegar in the water already. It's hot. It's good to go. I've cleaned off my jar rims and threads with vinegar. And I am putting my lids on to make sure everything is centered good to go. As soon as the lids are on, I am putting the rings on. Finger tight. Whatever you do, do not crank down on these rings. It'll just be nothing but grief when you time to take them off. Putting everything in the canner. Again, don't wanting touching sides, don't wanting touching each other. And you see that little metal thing with the holes in it? That's the rack that's holding it 1/4 of an inch off the bottom of the canner. So I have 1/4 inch of water under these. I do not need 1 inch of water over these. This is a pressure canner. I filled it up to 1.5 lines because I'm cooking it longer than normal for pint jars. The steam is what does the job for you, not the water. So you do not want to submerge them in boiling water on a canner. I've already checked my lid to make sure that I could see through the vent hole in the center. And I am closing it up. Now you see me turning this here. And very carefully and very slowly. This has been sped up. I'm actually a lot slower turning this. The reason being is you see that black dot? If something goes wrong, that is the emergency relief valve for the steam. I don't want it going through a window. I prefer to have a little hole in the ceiling if that happened versus having to replace an entire window. When that pressure indicator is popped up and you got a good roll of steam going, you set it for 10 minutes to let the air vent out. If the air doesn't fully vent out, your pressure cooker is not going to come up to temperature. After it has, place the weight on. I'm wiggling the weight to make sure it's set correctly. And I've set the timer for 15 minutes. If my weights haven't started jiggling within 15 minutes, something is wrong. It started jiggling. I had turned the heat down and to where I've got that nice little hula rock there. Turned off the heat. You see the pressure up, that gauge, and that's still rocking. Even if it stopped rocking, if that pressure gauge is up, do not remove the weights. Now that the pressure gauge has gone down, the pressure indicator, I know there's 0 pressure in my pot, and it is safe to remove the weights. You never want to rapid release steam from a pressure cooker, ever. Don't do it. It is not an Instapot. I'm opening up my canner, keeping the lid between me and the steam. Everything looks good. Now, keeping my jars straight up and down, I am pulling them out of the canner and putting them, yes, onto a towel. The other towel was dirty, so I changed it out. Since it's been sitting in the canner, because with the steam going down and then I gave it some extra time, my lids have already sealed. That's what I'm doing, is I'm checking to make sure they're all sealed. I let it sit for about 30 minutes before I pulled those out. Now they have to sit out for at least 10 hours. Then you can take the lids off, or the rings off, not the lids. And I'm going to put my little piece of cloth on top of them, so while they're in storage, they don't get dusty tops. All I have to do is take that string off and take the little cloth off, and the tops are clean. I can also, at that point, check too, did I lose seal at any time during storage, by pressing the top. I am tying it off. Just a simple like shoelace knot. I'm not doing any fancy knots on it, just like I tie a shoe. I put it aside, and I started to go ahead and start on the next jar, and decided I didn't like all that extra string hanging out. That could have ended up causing me a problem, especially if it got caught on another jar. So I'm shortening it up, making sure it's tight, and then I'm just trimming the edges off. Just like that, and throwing that little bit off to the side. Now I'm going to do the rest of the jars the exact same way. If you are selling jars, or you can't sell this, but if you're like doing jellies, selling jellies, I always do this with a piece of color cloth or a pattern cloth, mainly because it hides dirt better. White does not hide dirt at all. So this is what I'm doing just for storage in my own place. Though the running joke is, why am I bother storing it? Because my husband and family will get into them way long before they're even close to being considered expired. And there we go, 15 bean and andouille soup. Not Cajun, not Creole, but still good.